Welcome to Worcester Black History Moments. These moments are brought to you by the Worcester Black History Project in collaboration with Worcester Historical Museum. Worcester Black History Project recognizes and celebrates the experiences of Black people throughout central Massachusetts. The Worcester Black History Project encourages the preservation and sharing of history through scholarly educational outreach and programming such as the following virtual presentation. Black Americans have contributed tremendously to the culture of America. In New England, Black Americans were artists, educators, politicians, athletes, inventors, doctors, nurses, business owners, and everyday people who worked hard and pursued their dreams to make life better for future generations. Worcester Black History Moments offers an opportunity to learn about the contributions of that Black community, and we look forward to sharing this rich history of Worcester with you. We hope you enjoy this moment in Worcester Black history.
This moment in Worcester Black history is about Bethany Aunt Betty Veeney. Born Bethany Johnson around 1813 in Luray, Virginia, Veeney, her mother, siblings, and grandmother were enslaved by James Fletcher. Much later in life, Veeney herself writes, "My mother and her 5 children were owned by one James Fletcher, town of Luray, Page County, Virginia. Of my father I know nothing." When Veeney was about 9 years old, both her enslaver and her mother died, at which point Veeney's family was split up. In 1843, Veeney married her first husband, Jerry Ficklin. Having known the pain of separation caused by slavery, since her own family had been separated and sent to different plantations, Veeney tried to keep her family together. In her autobiography, Veeney recounts Jerry's attempt to escape before he was to be sold at a slave auction, but the attempt was in vain. In 1844, Jerry was sold down south, a heartbreaking event. Shortly thereafter, Veeney gave birth to her first child, a daughter she named Charlotte. Despite being separated from her family multiple times, Veeney was a resilient and strong-willed woman determined to be free. After a second marriage to Frank Veeney and birth of their son Joe, Veeney and her son were sold to G. J. Adams for $775 in 1858. Adams was an abolitionist from Rhode Island who effectively purchased Veeney's freedom and sent Veeney and her son Joe to Providence. And while Veeney and her son were no longer enslaved, this move to Providence meant that she was separated once again from her family, this time from her husband Frank. As a free woman, she settled in Providence, Rhode Island, at 22 Charlesfield Street. Sadly, she had only lived up north for 3 months when her young son died of an illness. Shortly thereafter, Veeney decided to move to Worcester. It was in Worcester that she found her community. Veeney was instrumental in community building at the African Methodist Episcopal Bethel Church, Worcester's second African American congregation formed in 1867. Veeney brought many members to the church. She was a devout Christian all her life. In her autobiography, she states that her lifelong devotion to Methodism began back in Luray, Virginia. Before Veeney was a member of AME Bethel, she was an active member of Park Street Methodist Church, a predominantly white church in Worcester. Family and religion were 2 values Veeney held close. She understood loss and separation from her life in Virginia, and Veeney's enslavers separated her from her siblings, her husbands, and her child, Charlotte. Although she was happy in Worcester, supported by the community, and able to work many comfortable jobs, Veeney remained haunted by her feelings of loss and separation from her family. During the Civil War, Veeney would cook for Union soldiers in Brookfield, Massachusetts. She also worked as a house cleaner and laundress. She mentions that all the northern inventions made her miss Old Virginia. After the Civil War, with the money she saved up from her multiple jobs, Veeney was able to travel back to Virginia to bring back her daughter, son-in-law, and grandchild. Veeney made this trip from Worcester to Virginia 3 more times to reunite a total of 16 relatives whom she brought back to Massachusetts. As mentioned in her narrative, Beanie stated she worked many jobs. However, of the least recorded of her skills is the oral history of Beanie's role in the invention in bluing dye, a whitening agent for clothing. Beanie used and sold bluing dye in her work as a laundress before and during her time in Worcester. At a period when it was difficult for African Americans and women to gain capital, Beanie was able to buy multiple properties for herself and for her family. Of these properties, Beanie kept 21 Tufts Street, now Winfield Street, as her home. She gave her daughter Charlotte and husband Aaron Jackson a property on 33 Winfield Street. In addition to these homes, Beanie also owned property on Mayfield Street. Beanie was also said to be an amazing cook. During the Civil War, she made porridge and brought it to soldiers in Brookfield, and she passed down her natural talent and recipes to her descendants. Her daughter Charlotte was also known to be a great cook. On November 20th, 2020, the Shenandoah Valley Black Heritage Project honored Beanie for her ability as a chef. The event honored soul food history, Black chefs, and their ancestors, and provided meals to the local community in the Shenandoah Valley. Bethany Beanie lived a long and full life. On March 19, 1912, she celebrated her 100th birthday, the news of which made the Telegram and Gazette. And several years later, on November 16, 1919, Bethany Beanie died at her daughter's home on 33 Winfield Street, surrounded by family and friends. The impact Beanie had on the Worcester community is undeniable, from helping to build community at AME Bethel Church, to buying property for her many family members that she brought from Virginia back to Worcester, to feeding Civil War soldiers and performing service work in Worcester. Descendants of Bethany Beanie still live in Massachusetts and Virginia to this day, and share many stories about the woman they know, who was born into slavery and settled in Worcester after obtaining her freedom. Bethany Betty Beanie is immortalized in her autobiography, Aunt Betty's Story, the narrative of Bethany Beanie, a slave woman, which she wrote in 1889. Beanie's narrative provided a unique perspective as a former enslaved woman, but to call Beanie just an author would be a mistake. She was also a businesswoman, inventor, chef, matriarch, and community leader. The impact Beanie made on the city of Worcester is just as important as her impact her autobiography made on those who read it, in Worcester and beyond. On July 12, 2003, the governor of Massachusetts, Mitt Romney, recognized her impact on the community and signed a proclamation honoring Beanie by declaring the day Bethany Beanie Day in Worcester. July 12, 2021 will mark 18 years since the proclamation. Mark the date on your calendars and celebrate the amazing life and impact of Bethany Beanie.
Worcester Black History Moments is brought to you by the Worcester Railers Hockey Club and signature support from a major grant to Worcester Historical Museum from the National Endowment for the Humanities, Exploring the Human Endeavor. Additional support has been provided by the Worcester Together Fund, a joint effort between the Greater Worcester Community Foundation and the United Way of Central Massachusetts in partnership with the City of Worcester. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time for another Worcester Black History Moment. For more information on how to participate, donate, or contribute your story to the Worcester Black History Project, please visit www.worcesterhistory.org/Black History Project. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Worcester Black History Project. Thank you.